So the whole idea of diamond dragging is that you just have a tip without spinning that just goes down and scratch engraves onto the material with this tip. First thing to always check is make sure that you can't wiggle your tip at all. So your diamond drag adapter needs to be tightened all the way up. Your micrometer might need to be tightened all the way up to the top to make sure you don't have any wiggle here. To show you how all this works, I'm going to lower the Z-axis. So when this hits the material, it pushes up, which triggers this proc sensor right here when it separates from this plate to activate. That's what tells the machine, okay, I'm pressing on the material, so then it starts to draw the character. And then it lifts and it goes to the next character and it comes down and pushes this up and moves. And this is why in theory you can even have a piece that's got a curve or it's slanted, and as long as you're going character by character, it will go to the next level, push up and determine where that is and run from there. Now you have a certain amount of float, and that's determined by where you have your Z float set here. So on the Xenotech table, if I move this way down, it does two things. One, it tightens the spring, which gives me tougher down pressure, harder down pressure here. It also limits the amount that I can move up before it hits that. As I come up further, now I have more float, which means I have more travel here, but it's putting less pressure on this spring, so it's it's going to engrave not as deep, it's not going to press down as hard. When diamond dragging, all of your artwork needs to be vector artwork. We have vector lines that we're going to be engraving in this logo. If we're engraving text, then we need to use an engraving font, or instead of an engraving font, we can use a true type font, and then in the settings for the font, instead of a solid fill, we can pick a serpentine fill. Under fill properties, we can say that maybe for diamond drag, we could be anywhere from 10 thousandths, 20 thousandths. We could even go tighter. We could do 5 thousandths if we wanted to have a really tight serpentine. So we'll look at this in wireframe mode, Control W, and we can see how tight that hatch fill is. Once we have our artwork ready, we can go File, Output to Controller, or F1. Once we are in the engraving device interface, we can set up all of our speeds, feeds, the type of engraving we're going to do. I have a diamond drag setting saved in my material settings dialog here. So we'll step through and see what I have set, and I'll explain why. So the engrave type here is drag or route. For diamond drag engraving, we use drag because we don't want the spindle motor running the whole time that it's doing its engraving, because that's just unnecessary. Our cutter mode is full automatic. This means that the machine goes out, the Z moves down until the proximity sensor detects that it's touched the surface, engraves a character object, lifts, go to the next one, comes down, the proximity sensor detects, it engraves. This is the easier type of engraving to do with any of these systems. Otherwise, we would be using a no cutter set, a manual cutter set. We also have a semi-auto cutter set that we would be setting and having to determine how deep we want to engrave into the material, locating a surface of the material, all that stuff. So this is the easy way to do it. Engrave speed is how fast the system moves while it's engraving a character or an object. I have it set to 8 inches per second here. The max is 10. This machine that I'm using is older and it doesn't like to run 10 inches per second anymore. When you're diamond dragging, though, you can go as fast as your table will go. It really doesn't matter about speed. It's not like if you are routing material, say routing plastic, then it depends on even the cutter size that you're using as to how fast you can go. but there's not really a speed limit with diamond drag. It's as fast as your system can handle. Traverse speed, this is how fast it moves when it's coming away from the home position and how fast it moves in between characters. And again, might as well go as fast as you can, especially in this type of engraving between characters. The engraved delay, we don't need any engraved delay here because we're not plunging into the material with a router bit or a cutter that needs the time to eject the initial material from the plunge before it starts to move. Here, we're just touching down and starting to scratch, so there's no delay needed. Resolution, this is the max resolution that we can have is 4000, and that's typically where you're going to want to leave it. It's going to give you the best looking characters, the smoothest curves. It just looks better. The machine's smoother running this way. Cutter lift, we set this as low as we can get away with. The reason is between each character, the Z has to lift the diamond up to move to the next character. The longer that lift is, the taller it is, the longer it takes for it to do that. It adds time to our runtime. I have this set to 1/8 of an inch, and I need to have some lift because there can be, some of this material won't necessarily be flat. It can have a little spring effect to it and lift up when I come off of the material. And I don't want the diamond to drag between characters and leave marks there. So I've got to come up enough to make sure that I handle any flex in the material as I go to the next character. Cutter up speed. Again, this is just one of those things. I picked 8. You can go pretty much as fast as you want to go, lifting the cutter out of the material. Cutter down speed does matter. So as the diamond goes down to the material, if we have it set too high, it can slam that diamond into the material, leaving a divot at the beginning of each character. So we slow this down a little bit to allow that to not slam in, the procs to detect without pushing down too hard. It gives it a better look. Spring pressure here. This number is how far after the procs detects do you continue to move the Z down and put pressure with that floating spring. If you need to go deeper, in this case, I'm engraving into brass, and it doesn't need to have a lot of pressure because brass is so soft. If this were engraving, diamond dragging into stainless steel, I might set this higher. I might even set this to 1/8 of an inch. I could even do something like 1/4 of an inch that I would push down on that spring and give more pressure, more downforce onto that diamond to make a deeper mark. If we want to make multiple passes, we go into multi-pass mode. And we have 2 options here. We have multi-pass depth, which means we go deeper each pass, or we have pass copies. With diamond drag, we want pass copies because there's not really, since we're not routing or milling, there's no point in having a different depth for each pass. So here we just go over it again and again. So we can have it set for 2 passes here. For this example, all I'm going to do is use my regular diamond drag setting. I just run 1 pass, especially on brass. It's soft enough, it works well. And then I can either run the job or I can apply and exit, and then I can use the run button up here. Now remember, the F11 key is the zoom key. We can zoom to the plate, zoom to the object, and then we can hit play on either the pendant or right here at the play button. So as this runs, we see the black lines means that it's completed. The yellow lines are the traverse moves where the cutter is up between characters. The green lines are all the points that have been sent over already to the controller and are just waiting to be operated. And then sometimes on a longer line, you can even see the red lines, and that's the ones that are actually being done at that moment. This artwork was created in CorelDRAW using contouring. So it's not exactly optimized for engraving. You see it hunt and peck around a little bit as it does the insides of some objects and then move to other things. But contouring out of Corel does give some pretty cool looks, so it's worth a little extra time. Now that it's finished, I can go back out to my full view. I didn't have to go out to the full view, I don't know why I do it. And then I can just close the controller. If I don't need to run it again, I can close the EDI. Ready to move on to the next job. Again, I created this artwork in CorelDRAW and I printed it into Carpathia using the document writer. And I think that contour stuff looks kind of cool. It's just fun to diamond drag.